Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Kermitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And this week we watched the Muppet Movie, as well as a few other things from the era, which is 1979. But first, you don't know who we are or what this is that you're listening to. Besides,
They might know who we are.
That's, to be fair, the people listening to this one early on
Yeah.
probably
They
exclusively know who we are.
Could be my mom.
Hello, moms, listening to our podcast. But yeah, I'm Matthew Gatos. You might know me from the internet, from the Twitter.com, the YouTubes.com. I've done many things on YouTube over the years. Currently, I'm a producer on the show Journey to the Microcosmos. Sam and I both work at the same company, Complexly. And yeah, you might know us from those things.
And I'm Sam Schultz. I'm a producer at Complexly for the YouTube series SciShow and SciShow Kids and like all the different SciShow things. But I'm also a co-host of the podcast SciShow Tangents, which I would guess if you are listening to this show, you probably listen to that show.
Sam Schultz podcast fans are here.
Yeah. Yeah. All 20-ish of them. Thank you.
So why are we making a Muppet podcast, Sam?
Because you said that we should watch all the Muppet stuff. I think probably spurred by the fact that the Muppet show came out on Disney Plus.
Yeah, I think this was
was the initial thought.
This was an idea I think we had sort of kicked around for a while of like doing a podcast together. A Muppet podcast specifically came up at some point, and we were kind of not really moving forward on it. And then all of a sudden we got the headlines popping up that said the Muppet show's coming to Disney Plus, and we're like, well, no reason not to.
And I think the more we looked into it, the more we both realized that though I do like the Muppets quite a bit, there's very little Muppet stuff I've actually seen. I think my main touchstone is the Muppet Movie and probably like Muppet Christmas Carol. And then other than that, I watched the Muppet Show when I was a kid, but haven't really watched it much since then. But I feel like if people were asked, what's something Sam likes, the Muppets would be on that list. So I might as well live up to that.
Yeah, I feel like it's part of my sort of little rundown of you ask people what I like. That like puppets or Muppets would probably be on that list as well. And I'm also just sort of like a completionist in ways that like a sort of a collector of consumption, I guess, where whether good or bad, I decide that I'm going to watch all of the things that exist, or I'm going to read all of that thing. And I'm doing the same thing with Star Wars right now, where I'm trying to consume all of the Star Wars canon, which is way more.
And you're not even making that into content.
No,
You're
I'm just doing that for me.
You idiot.
I know, but I think this appealed to me because I'm like, okay, we're going to go watch every single thing that we can possibly find that is Muppet related.
And I think to me, I'm not as much of a completionist, but I think what's interesting about this idea to me is that I like to get the context of things, and I like to like trace the creative path of things that I enjoy, or like learn about the history of things that I enjoy. And I think the Muppets are so weird and interesting because they've been continuously popular for like how long? Like 50 years almost.
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's interesting to me that I'm sure like the point of this podcast is what we'll get through is sort of their popularity has like ebbed and flowed throughout the years, but to me it never really felt that way because I think as a kid I was so into things like Muppets Tonight and just the idea of the Muppets that people would say like, oh, the Muppets are still around and doing things, and I'm like, yes,
yeah, obviously.
Have you not watched everything they've done since then?
Yeah.
I think I didn't realize for a long time that I was sort of an outlier in the fan base, where I just assumed that everyone was aware of how relevant the Muppets were at all times. But I also wasn't necessarily aware that they weren't relevant at certain times, or that they would like disappear from TV for a few years. And yeah, so I think that's mainly why we want to make this podcast is to go through the history of the Muppets by watching the Muppets and trying to understand for ourselves, and obviously to share with everyone who's listening, what the Muppets have gone through and sort of what led to the next thing, and like what else they were doing at the time. Because I know in my head as a kid, like you said, the Muppet Show was on Disney Channel, but so was Fraggle Rock, and so was Muppet Babies, and so were all these other things. So they just sort of feel like the Muppets were all happening all at the same time.
Yeah, even in this stuff we watched today, they talk about, in Muppets Go Hollywood, they mention Kermit's meteoric rise to fame. But it's like, Kermit was invented in the 60s.
He sort of existed in the 50s, and it's that thing where it's like, yeah, that's not meteoric.
Yeah, and then the Muppets Go to Hollywood is 79. It took him so long to even like get to that point. Jim Henson was already like 30 years into his career, and still felt like an underdog too, which I think is another interesting through line. Is like they constantly revert back to being like the losers, no matter how high up they got.
Yeah, I think that's something that keeps the characters interesting, which is we'll get to in, I don't know, however many years this podcast takes to catch up to 2020. But there's been like, I think as the sort of social media influencer thing has infiltrated some of the Muppets content, some of them have become a little bit more cocky and so this is what you can expect from this podcast. Is we're going to talk a lot about the characters themselves of the Muppets and what we care about and what we think about them as like personalities, and I think we're going to talk about them as if they're real people a lot of the time.
It's hard not to.
Yeah.
It's hard to look at any puppet and think that's not real.
I've heard
Just what
many
happens.
people talk about when they do happen to meet Muppets that they end up talking to the puppet rather than the puppeteer.
The little guy hunched up on the ground.
Yeah. But I think as far as like our sort of puppet history, for lack of a better phrase, goes, you guys can't see this, but currently Sam and I both have Kermits behind us on our shelves.
Yeah.
I also have a Whatnot custom designed Muppet on my shelf.
What that is. I thought it was Grover with a blue nose.
Oh no, it's just my custom Whatnot puppet.
An off-model Grover.
Just discount Grover. But we are both people who not only like Muppets a lot, but we're also puppet people. On SciShow Kids, one of the shows you produce, there are puppets that some you perform. In the past, there's been ones that I have performed and voiced. And so we've each delved into the world of puppet making and puppeteering.
Yeah. It's weird. My fiance is actually like an accomplished puppet maker, but I don't think even she wouldn't even think of that. Like, she wouldn't think that she was. Because she built all the puppets for SciShow Kids. There's 4, I think, that show up regularly. Yeah, and I perform Sam the Bat. I can't do any voices besides my own voice, so I'm pretty much stuck just doing like one character.
And my duck is just pretty much a bad Darkwing Duck impression.
I like it.
But that's sort of who I guess we are as far as puppets go. I know that I was trying to think back as sort of like as a kid if I was into puppets, and I think the best example and like earliest sort of Muppet memories kind of like go together in my head. It was a trip to Florida when I was like 10. Me and my mom were going on a cruise, and then we were also going to Disney World. And I remember 2 very specific things happening during that trip. One, while we were on the cruise, it happened to line up with the night that Garth Brooks was going to be on Muppets Tonight.
Okay.
And I was both a big Muppets fan and a huge Garth Brooks fan when I was a child.
Okay.
And I like demanded that we be back in the cabin by like 8 o'clock or whatever it was to watch Garth Brooks on Muppets Tonight. Even though we're like on this cruise, there's a ton of fun stuff happening.
Was it a Disney cruise?
It was a Big Red Boat cruise. So it was like the Warner Brothers version of a Disney cruise. So like, Taz and Bugs Bunny walking around. But I remember that demand that I placed on the trip. And then that same trip, we went to Walt Disney World. And at Epcot, there was like a puppet stand there selling puppets. And I got this old man puppet that is close to like a Muppet sort of design that I then had on my hand pretty much the entire rest of the trip at the hotel, on the airplane. I remember there was little kids like the seat behind me on the airplane, and I was like doing a show for them over the seats.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, but that's sort of like the earliest memory I have of being super into puppets.
I probably bought a puppet from that same exact puppet stand. I had like a bird marionette that I think I bought in Epcot. I don't think he survived the plane trip home. I think he was too tangled up and we had to cut him off his strings.
Oh, then he's not even a puppet anymore. He's just a sad bird.
He's just a really floppy bird. I don't know. I like puppets. I like Muppets more than I like puppets. I don't really care. I like puppets in, I think like the peak of like movie special effects is like Alien with like the alien puppet basically, or like the puppetry era of special and creature effects is
right. Like watching
great.
a Star Wars movie when you're like, oh, there's like 27 people controlling Jabba the Hutt right now.
Totally. Yeah. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch another kind of puppet show really, like that wasn't the Muppets. My first Muppet memory, I've been trying to think about this. I think I probably just watched a load of Muppet Show on Nickelodeon. I can very clearly remember sitting in front of the TV watching that. I think I got into the Muppet Movie very late in life. Probably the first time I saw that was in like 7th grade or something. I think my mom kind of had liked the Muppets for a long time. Back to maybe like Rolf on Jimmy Dean. She was aware of them. And I'm pretty sure she bought the DVD or something and we watched the Muppet Movie together. I don't know. I've been a very fair weather Muppet fan, I think. I feel like to me, the thing that I like the most about the Muppets, and especially the Muppet Movie, is kind of like the put on a show, try really hard ethos of it more than I like. Like I like the ideas that Jim Henson tries to get across in his work of creativity and like just trying your best. And also like a lot of his stuff is weirdly about like being a manager, I feel like, or like being a producer and just like trying to do your best by all the people who are like looking up to you or like depending on you or like making millions of people happy. Those are the kind of things that I think about all the time and not so much like the puppets.
That's something that comes across in obviously the Muppet Movie is like the main theme of like making millions of people happy. But then there's also, it carries through so much of his stuff that was his main goal. Mm-hmm. And he also was realistic and talked a lot about in a bunch of his different work the pressure of time and the idea of running out of time and never having enough time for all your ideas. And so I think he was one of those people who definitely tried to get his ideas out as thoroughly and as quickly as possible. And he was very much a perfectionist from everything I've read about him. But yeah, I think that's what separates, for me, the idea of the Muppets versus other puppets is that sort of Jim Henson soul behind them. And there is just something about the design of Muppets in general that there, like you hold a Muppet character and then you hold another puppet and you're like, something is missing in this other one. Like it just doesn't look alive. Whereas like you can watch Jim Henson and Kermit on the Arsenio Hall show and you're like, well, yes, of course. He has 2 guests on. He has Jim Henson and he has Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
So yeah, this podcast, the plan is, at least for now, to run through the chronological history of the Muppets by watching everything we can get our little grubby hands on. And that's going to include a lot of old things that probably don't even exist anymore in some things, where there's like 8 episodes left of this 60-episode thing.
Yeah.
So not everything is going to be watched and talked about because we literally cannot watch everything. But the things that we can watch, we will talk about on this podcast. We won't probably give each small thing its own episode.
No.
But we are going to combine some things, and other things will get a full episode. And if we decide after we've watched something that we might come back and talk about it later, we might do that. So this will be a little bit mushy, especially in the beginning stages here. I think we'll figure out as we go along.
The beginning stuff, there's like a lot of lost things and a lot of things that is like a fragment of a tape that somebody made a million years ago.
It's in that era of the like mid 50s through the 60s where videotape was sort of like starting to be a thing, or I think technically it was like the oscilloscope or whatever was like the early versions, and nobody thought to like keep anything. They all just like taped over everything. That's, if you go back to watch old Doctor Who episodes, there's like 60 episodes of Doctor Who that just were recorded over by the BBC. And it's the same thing with a lot of the early, like, Today Show appearances of the Muppets and some of their Sam and Friends and a lot of their other stuff where they needed tapes to record on, or they needed space to record on, or they just didn't think about it.
They didn't care.
No.
Yeah.
And so they didn't save anything. So there is maybe like 3 episodes of some of these things, but we'll talk about as much as we can talk about.
And we're not going to do a whole hour on every Sam and Friends lip sync episode or anything like that, because I would lose my gourd.
Yes, and we're not even probably going to do that for other things that actually have episodes like Muppets Tonight and stuff.
Yeah.
But we will devote the time that we feel is necessary to properly discuss the thing. And the reason we're not starting at the beginning, we're starting with the Muppet Movie, is because this is sort of, I guess there's different peaks and valleys of the Muppets fame, but this is kind of a peak Muppet time in sort of like they had come off of SNL. They were in the 3rd season of their show. This is their first movie, obviously. And for me personally, we can talk about this more when we're talking about the actual movie. This is sort of like the culmination of these characters. Like this is sort of the version of these characters changed a lot as they were developed through the Muppet Show. But since the Muppet Movie came out, these characters have not changed a ton.
Also, the Muppet Movie feels like the default thing that every reboot goes back to. Like, the Muppet Movie has become the one canon Muppet thing, sort of, in a way.
Yeah, it's sort of, I was thinking about this comparison. The 2011 Muppets movie is sort of like The Force Awakens to the Muppet movies,
It really
Star
is,
Wars: A
yeah.
New Hope, where it's sort of retreading a lot of the same, like, let's get the band back together formula. But it is that thing that you kind of have to go back to, because when you want to do a Muppets Christmas Carol or a Muppets Wizard of Oz or something like that, if people don't understand what is happening with these characters or who they are, just watching them play characters in a Wizard of Oz movie feels very bizarre.
That's weird. I never thought of that before. There's like a certain context you need to understand the Muppets, so they need to retell who the hell the Muppets are every now and then.
Right. Like, I think one of the segments we're going to do on this podcast every week is Muppet of the Week, where we're going to talk about a specific Muppet in the latter half of the episode and delve into sort of some of the appearances and the performers and stuff. But one of the things I found interesting when looking up some of these things was that separating sort of the canon of a Muppet versus the stories of the Muppet are somewhat difficult, because if you look at Fozzie, for instance, Fozzie has a mother in certain things, and in other times he's Kermit's twin brother in a Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you just saw the Great Muppet Caper, your understanding of who the Muppets are and what their relation to each other is that Kermit and Fozzie are brothers, and their dad is a weird, horrible
frog bear.
monster. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, in reality, the sort of canon of the Muppets is that the Muppets are actors.
Yeah.
And things like the Great Muppet Caper it's a movie that the Muppets have made. So like, Kermit is Brad Pitt starring in a movie. So that does not mean that like Kermit and Fozzie are actually brothers. They're just playing brothers in a movie. This is my understanding of it.
Mine too. The
how
Muppet
it
Movie
works.
further confuses that, as does Muppets Go Hollywood, where it's like the Muppet Movie doesn't reference the Muppet Show in any way, except that it has those characters. But then, so are the characters in the beginning and ending of the Muppet Movie, when they're watching the movie, the same ones from the Muppet Show? Because like the Muppet Show is like a vaudeville stage act and not like a Hollywood production. So who are these guys?
In
Which
my
one's
head, the
real
Muppet
one?
Show is real. And I think the bookends on the movie are also real. And I think you're right
Okay.
that those are the characters or the people, Muppets, whatever, from the Muppet Show. And that's why Robin asks, like, is this how the Muppets really got together? And so I think he's asking about, like, those Muppets from the Muppet Show, is this how you all became friends? But before we get into that too much, let's just wrap up this sort of like, what are we doing here section, and say that if you're here to listen to like a history expert deep dive onto what the Muppets are, who they are, the makings of, we're probably not that. We're more of we're going to watch things, enjoy things, and have a fun conversation with each other. There are plenty of great like research resources out there that we'll be using for this podcast, and I suggest that if you want more information, go check out. There's Brian J. Jones' biography of Jim Henson. There's Muppet Wiki, which I think without Muppet Wiki, this podcast probably would not exist because it's so incredibly useful. And then Defunct Land's Jim Henson series is really good. And then a couple good Twitter accounts to follow are @HistoryMuppet and @MuppetWiki. They're both great at posting cool behind the scenes and fun clips that people forget about. So yeah, that's the rundown of what we're doing here. We're having fun. We have vowed, hence the commitment that we have made to each other, that we are going to watch everything Muppets related, and some things not technically Muppets, but tangentially related to Muppets.
Close enough to the Muppets that people would be confused if we didn't do them.
Yes.
And maybe by the end we will be the foremost experts in Muppets.
We'll see.
Who
I think
knows?
like this is one of those things where it's going back and watching everything from the beginning. We're
Yeah.
going to have most of the information that's out there.
That exists anymore. It
Yeah.
feels like a lot more ink has been spilled about Sesame Street than about like the behind the scenes of the Muppet Show or like the Muppet journey.
Yeah, I think that like I said, the Brian J. Jones biography of Jim Henson is probably the most comprehensive behind the scenes that you can get on a lot of these, but that is also taken a lot from Jim Henson's journals and other things, so it's really only like one person's point of view for a lot of it.
Yeah.
I do hope that one day we'll get a pretty like in-depth documentary about a lot of this.
If even that even exists, any footage or any interviews or anything, I don't
Yeah.
know. Well, anyway, do you want to hear what the Muppet Movie's about?
Yeah, we should talk about the Muppet Movie.
We join the Muppets at Worldwide Studio, which is obviously a film studio, where they are gathered and are about to enjoy a test screening of The Muppet Movie. This movie, according to Kermit, is an approximation of how the Muppets met. The film rolls. Kermit the Frog, in the movie, is a simple frog living in a simple swamp, but he yearns for more. One day, he's just kind of sitting on a log doing his thing when a Hollywood agent drifts by on a boat and tells Kermit that Hollywood needs frogs like him. So Kermit busts out his bike and heads west. Along the way, he meets Fozzie Bear, a hack comedian working in a seedy nightclub. Fozzie agrees to go with Kermit to Hollywood, and they take his uncle Studebaker so he doesn't have to ride his bike anymore, which has been destroyed anyway. But the road to Hollywood isn't just filled with friendly faces. Kermit catches the attention of Doc Hopper, the owner of a floundering frog leg fast food joint, who's desperate to have Kermit as his new mascot. What unfolds afterwards is basically an extremely slow chase movie as Kermit and Fozzie make their way across the country, picking up Gonzo, Camilla, Miss Piggy, and Rolf along the way, and finding themselves besieged by Doc Hopper and his increasingly unhinged schemes. Eventually, with a little help from Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem and Dr. Honeydew and Beaker, they scare Doc Hopper off once and for all and get to Hollywood. Once there, they go to Worldwide Studios, where they were at the beginning of the movie, where powerful producer Lou Lord gives them the standard rich and famous contract, and they set out to make all their creative dreams come true. The end. Back in the world, the real world, of the Muppets watching the Muppet Movie screening, all the Muppets get up to their normal shenanigans as the credits roll. And Sweetums shows up, but Sweetums was with them the entire time.
Well, he was always a few steps behind.
He was on the Muppet Show, though, so they already knew him. That's the thing that confuses me.
Oh no, you're right.
That's where it all falls apart. So
Sweetums
Sweetums is
the
the big monster guy with the big pink nose, and in the movie, they meet him, and he's working some dead-end job, and they're like, hey, come to Hollywood with us. And he's like, oh, no, and he runs away. And then they're like, oh, that was weird, and then they drive away. But then he comes back with his suitcase because he was going to come with them. And at the end of the movie, when it's back in the real world, Sweetums finally catches up and bursts through the screen. Except Sweetums has been on The Muppet Show since the beginning of The Muppet Show.
Yeah.
So explain that one to me.
That does raise a lot of questions that I had not thought
Yeah.
about. But I think that is
Yeah.
the thing that sort of breaks the canon a little bit in that movie. Because, theoretically, Sweetums should just be in the screening with them because
Yeah.
he's already their friend and has already worked with them. But in this, he's just now catching up to them at the end of the movie. I feel like I could spend the next 45 minutes talking about that alone, but we probably shouldn't.
No, probably shouldn't. It, like most Muppet things, doesn't particularly fit into any canon except for a canon of characterization of the Muppets, like of particular Muppets.
Yeah, I think thinking about it too hard is a fool's errand and trying to
Yeah.
figure it out and do the math, because I think so many things that Jim Henson created, especially going back to the early days of some of his shorter skits, so many of them, there's no continuity between them, and they all just end in an explosion or something being eaten because...
Yeah, a lot of characters die at the end of
Yeah,
skits.
a lot of it boiled down to what Jim Henson thought was funny. And so it was just like, I don't know, have him get eaten by the end. And
Yeah.
so I think that going into all of these with that mindset of just like, it's there because Jim Henson thought it was funny and good is
Yeah.
pretty much the reason most of these things exist.
And sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. Like, sometimes a character will do something that will suddenly become the only thing that character does for the rest of time. The Muppet Movie, made in 1979. I'm going to give you some context now for
All
what
right.
was going on in the rest of the world.
Bring it on.
The end of the tumultuous decade of disco, the silent majority, stagflation, energy crisis after energy crisis. Seems like the 70s were kind of a bad time.
The world needed the Muppets.
The world needed the Muppets and had the Muppets for a long time. Jimmy Carter was the president. I don't know if that's good or bad. Ronald Reagan is right around the corner. That is bad. And he was ready to usher in. I think this is really important to the Muppet Movie, actually. The 80s were right around the corner, full of commercialism and video games and like a new brand of conservatism. Variety shows, which were super hot through most of television history since like the 50s, were basically like dying out completely. And so were game shows. And TV was becoming something more like we'd recognize today. It was mostly comedies and drama like Dukes of Hazzard and Happy Days and Three's Company. And MTV was going to come out like the next year. But one of the biggest things on TV around the world was The Muppet Show. It was syndicated, but it was syndicated to like every country on Earth, and it had huge ratings and everybody loves it. And also in the world of film, recent hits like Jaws, Star Wars, and Halloween were changing the way that movies were written and made, moving away from like really shaggy vignette-driven movies like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or like The Long Goodbye, more towards the blockbuster movie-making style. So special effects laden spectacles like Superman, Alien, and Star Trek the Motion Picture were all top box office movies in '79, and The Muppet Movie was the 10th highest grossing movie of that year.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time to think about being behind the trends, but because they're Muppets, they sort of get a pass.
Yeah.
Sometimes, where it's like the vaudeville idea of the theater, and then also just looking at the Muppet Movie itself, it's sort of that like 60s mad world style movie where it's like, here's a bunch of celebrity cameos for fun, and here's some wacky hijinks. And as you're talking about this, like the movie's moving more towards blockbusters, like this is not a blockbuster.
Not at all. Yeah, that's exactly what, like, as I was watching, I've seen this movie so many times.
Same.
And this time as I was watching it, I was like, not barely paying attention, but I was looking up what other things were happening around this time. And that's what really struck me was like, if the last year of a decade is like the most decade that decade is, like the 70s is the most 70s in 79, then maybe the Muppet Movie is the most 1970s movie possible. I'd say it's more like Smokey and the Bandit than Mad. Well, it is a lot like Mad World, but it is like a rural car chase movie without any actual car stunts.
Excuse me, Gonzo's car ends up on top of the Studebaker.
Well, yeah,
Clearly a stunt.
But that's like, they just put a car on top of another car. We don't actually see that.
But how? You don't know.
The biggest stunt is like Fozzie does a big U-turn. And that's about the scariest it ever gets.
There's a giant pie that flies.
Oh, yeah. The giant pie is a pretty good stunt. That's true.
But yeah, they were super famous at this time. Like, they hosted The Tonight Show as part of, like, the run-up to this movie coming out. There was, like, a huge publicity push for this movie. And Kermit guest hosted The Tonight Show, which was a thing that, like, Joan Rivers and other famous comedians got to do. It was not, like, a fictional character gets to host The Tonight Show. And The Tonight Show now with like Jimmy Fallon is like, everyone knows it, but it's nowhere near the level of importance as like the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson was.
Everybody basically had to watch those shows. If you were watching TV, you had like two choices in that time slot.
Yeah, so the idea of Kermit hosting that is wild. Yeah, I think that's great to like understand what was going on in the world and also where the Muppets sort of were, because again, what we want to talk about is how they got to this point, how they got this famous in what they call a meteoric rise, but it's not really. And I think it'll also be fun to explore where they've gone since and why things have dropped off at certain times.
And I think my theory so far is that this was, I mean, I don't even think this is theory. I think literally this was the peak of the Muppets. I think the last season of The Muppet Show had higher ratings than The Muppet Show had when The Muppet Movie came out, and Jim Henson just wanted to stop doing it.
Yeah, it was one of those, it was definitely a choice. It wasn't canceled or anything because it was performing badly.
But I think in terms of like public awareness, this was probably the most respected that the Muppets were and the most that people were aware. They had the biggest swing in Hollywood at the time. Like,
yeah, I think they lived off that for a long time and are like, kind of still to an extent.
I think they still basically are.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that a lot of their movies that happened after that, some are very, very good. And I think others sort of wouldn't have gotten made had the Muppets not had a very well-established foundation. And this is that foundation that we're building from. So I think it'll be interesting to see what led up to this and where that turning point is because maybe it happened earlier than we're even really noticing. Like maybe for us, it feels like the Muppet Show was probably the first big thing, but there was maybe like some Today Show appearances in the 60s that's like, oh, this is when everyone started to know the name Muppets.
Well, Rolf had already been
That's true.
really famous on the Jimmy Dean Show.
Yeah.
He was like the co-host of that show.
That's true.
And was like a huge breakout star. But even then there was like at least a 10-year gap between that and the Muppet Show, if not more than a 10-year gap.
Yeah.
It would be weird to see Rolf and things if you were a fan of him on the Jimmy Dean Show. It would be like, it's just, he's like a crossover character almost. It's like the Marvel multiverse or something, except this
like,
dog who plays piano.
Yeah, like who cast Rolf in the Muppet movie? Like who is this part of his contract? Is he allowed to do that to Jimmy Dean?
That is what I'm very curious about too. Jim Henson must have been a good negotiator, because it seems like he got to keep all of everything that he ever made, basically.
Yeah, there was some, I know specifically when Sesame Street was starting, there was some contract negotiations that were thorough from what I've read about, especially when it came to merchandising, because he was sort of thinking far ahead on how successful that was going to be. Getting back to the Muppet movie, I wonder how you feel about the movie within a movie concept. Like, would it work for you if it was just from the beginning of the credits to they get the rich and famous, sing Rainbow Connection, boom? I
don't think it would, because I think the beginning and ending kind of are the resolution. Like the bookends are sort of the resolution to their story. I don't know. I was thinking about this a lot, like while I was watching it. If I was alive at the time and went to see this movie, would I be mad that it wasn't the Muppet Show movie? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like and I think that's maybe why those bookends would help you, is because if you went in and the first thing you're seeing is Kermit on a log singing a song, you'd be a little confused as to why he's not at the theater. He has a job. Why is he not at his job?
So I think it works. I think it makes it into a standalone movie, kind of, like that you don't have to know anything about the Muppet Show.
Yeah, I think this is probably also, I think a lot of people have seen the Muppet Movie as kids, as adults, whatever. And maybe those people are getting into the Muppet Show now that it's on Disney Plus, but maybe they never watched it growing up. Maybe they never watched Muppets Tonight. Maybe they've never seen anything but the Muppet Christmas Carol and the Muppet Movie.
Well, and in 1979, you couldn't rent any of this stuff or stream any of this stuff. So if you'd never seen the Muppet Show, you'd have to be able to still go see the Muppet Movie and understand what was going on, I guess. Mm-hmm. What do you think about it? Do you have any particular thoughts on it?
I think I like it. Like you said, I think it's a good framing exercise. And I think, especially at the time, if you're watching this in the middle of season 3 and 4 of the Muppet Show, the only exposure you have to these characters is them in that setting, and you're seeing them completely out of that setting now. You need a little bit of context for what's happening.
Right.
And it also obviously gives them a way to bring in a lot of characters that don't really get their moment in the movie.
Like New Zealand.
New Zealand. We need to talk about New Zealand. I don't like him.
No, he's the guy who throws the boomerang fish at the beginning of this movie. And for some reason, he shows up in every Muppet project for decades, even though he's not funny at all. Well, he might be a big part of the Muppet Show. I'm not really sure.
I feel the same way about him as Kermit does, where like Kermit walks into the theater and Lou's like, "Hey, can I be in your movie?" And it's like, come on, Lou, the movie's already made. We're here to watch the movie. And no, you can't, because you're terrible.
We didn't invite you to be in the movie. I'm not sure we invited you to this test screening. Yeah, but here you are.
You snuck in like Statler and Waldorf's trunk or something to get in here. But yeah, I think I understand that they want to get more characters into the movie because, it's that thing. These are characters that if you watch the Muppet Show, you are used to seeing a lot of these characters. Yeah. And so they're giving you that sort of like, here they are. They're not going to be in the movie, but you get to see them here.
One thing I'm interested in also looking at is where these characters' relationships start in the beginning of the Muppet Show. Like if Kermit is even aware of Gonzo, or if Gonzo's just like there.
He's just like hired to be the stunt guy or whatever. Yeah, I think and again, I'm realizing the more we talk about a lot of this stuff, that canon stuff is kind of going to be like the lowest on the list of priorities. Yeah. Because I'm thinking back to like the Muppet Babies, and it's like all these guys knew each other as babies. If you're going off of that,
clearly an alternate reality situation there.
Yeah. So I think we'll have to sort of take each project on its own and look at how they relate to each other in that. But I think there is definitely character development that happens throughout these shows that I think will be important.
Yeah, I guess one reason I think about that too is that this movie was written by the two head writers of the Muppet Show, which maybe doesn't necessarily feel like I was kind of surprised about that just because of how disconnected it is from the Muppet Show.
And it's a lot less wacky.
Well, yeah, I mean, and speaking of that, another big thing with this movie was that it was the first time that not the first time, but one of the first times that the Muppets were in the real world. Like you said, they had hosted shows and stuff, but that was like, they hadn't been outside of a TV studio, basically.
Right, like seeing them just out, like interacting with humans at a bar or at restaurants and things was kind of not the norm for how we expected to see Muppets.
Yeah, and it seems like from the little bit that I've read about it, that they were nervous that it wouldn't work, which seems so weird to me.
Yeah, like they have... I think you watched it, maybe the camera test that they did. There's like a 17-minute camera test that you can watch where it seems like they were just maybe had a day off while shooting the Muppet Show, and they're like in the English countryside, and they took Fozzie, Kermit, Miss Piggy, and Sweetums out to like a farm to record some test footage just to see, like, okay, does it look weird when Kermit's outside? Which, like, yeah, thinking back on it, feels like a really weird idea now that it would be... something they would worry about. Yeah, that they would worry about that. And I don't know, that camera test, I think is very funny.
It's funny, yeah.
Frank Oz is very good.
Oh yeah, they're such a good comedy duo, Frank Oz and Jim Henson. Another thing that the like I read a little Muppet fan letter from the time, and another thing everybody was freaking out about was that it was the first time you could see their legs.
There is something always a little bizarre, like when you see a full body puppet, like when you see Kermit walking out or when you see them dancing on stage or something like that.
That part's a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like clearly like a blue screen situation or something like that. But it is just, I don't know. It's a little unsettling at times.
I don't think so. I think it's cute. I think especially when they're like sitting around the campfire and you can see their little feet. I think they're really cute then.
That I don't mind for some reason. I think it's just it's when it's, I think, clearly been... like people on a blue screen, like awkward movement. This puppet wasn't really created to walk like this, so now it looks a little weird. Those are the moments that are more upsetting to me. Like the idea of seeing their legs is not upsetting. It's more the movement that comes with it at times.
Kermit on a bike isn't scary.
Kermit on a bike is my favorite thing. Kermit on a bike will like always, I think they do it in like 5 or 6 different movies and shows, but I love that concept because it is one of those things where, again, maybe this isn't us being really into puppets type of thing, but like I watch that moment and it just breaks my brain a little bit. It's the same thing like in the first episode of The Muppet Show. He like drinks a glass of milk and looks at the camera and says, "Think about it, folks." And I'm like, oh, I did think about it, and now I'm confused because you just drink milk and you're a puppet.
How did he do it?
I think it's just a hole in the bottom of the glass. Like I think it's the same thing in the Muppet Movie when Miss Piggy and Kermit go get wine in the scene with Steve Martin. They drink with straws, and the glass is empty. And it's like, okay, conceivably, all they had to do was poke holes in the bottom of the table and drain the water or the wine out. Yeah. But it's still very convincing, and one of those things that just shows sort of the genius behind a lot of the design elements. Speaking of Steve Martin being the waiter, how do you feel about sort of the cameos throughout the film? Do they have, like, do some land better for you than others?
I think one thing is that it feeds into my newfound appreciation of it as like the closing party of the 70s. It's like everybody who was having a grand old time in the 70s is there yucking it up one last time. So I think just as somebody who happens to know who a lot of those people are, because I've seen this movie so many times and because like I grew up watching like Nick at Night and being interested in that kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's cool and fun. And it feels like the Muppet Show. It's like a natural extension of that. It's not like The Simpsons where all of a sudden they had like Charles Barkley on every episode, or like they had some new weird guest on every episode. Like it fits into the Muppets that they are going to encounter guest stars.
Well, if anything, it's weirder. Like the Muppet Show proves this as well, but like the stars that they do have on are not necessarily the first people you would imagine would be picked. Like when you think of like, okay, you have these like stand-up comedians from the 70s, like Richard Pryor, super raunchy stand-up comedian. It's like, oh yeah, he makes sense to put in the Muppet Movie. Like I feel like that would be less likely to happen today. Like I don't feel like you'd have Dave Chappelle show up on the Muppets now.
I guess so, but that'd be really funny.
It would be great.
Dom DeLuise is definitely more of a Muppet type person than Richard Pryor, though.
Yes, I agree that like he's fully in there. He feels like he's playing a character that like folds into the world, whereas you have like Bob Hope playing the Ice Cream Man, who's like clearly just there to be Bob Hope being an ice cream man.
Yeah, but that works for me too. They actually all, I think, work for me pretty well.
Can I tell you the one that doesn't? Can you guess? Yeah.
God, I really hope it's not Steve Martin.
It's not Steve Martin. I love Steve Martin. Okay. Especially like that whole scene. When I rewatching it the other day, I was like, do I want to go as Steve Martin, the waiter for Halloween?
His short, that reveal
like
of the shorts.
The leaderhosen.
I never noticed the reveal of it until this time.
Yeah,
he's got zooms out.
Very high shorts.
Shorts on. It's so funny. His is the last one devoid of context. I feel like still works if you don't know who he is, because he's just so like ridiculous.
Yeah, a lot of the other ones you feel like you're like clearly missing out on.
Well, even Richard Pryor just feels like he's playing that character. Like, oh, cool, it's Richard Pryor, but he's not really being particularly funny. He's just talking about balloons.
Yeah, but like Edgar Bergen is one where you have Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy, who's his puppet, in there. That like they're in the movie because they were a huge inspiration to Jim Henson and a huge sort of bringing as far as bringing puppets into the mainstream goes. Like Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy are huge in that regard, totally. And so it makes sense to have them there. But then the camera like lingers on him for just like a little longer than makes sense. That it's just like, look, we got him in our movie.
Well, I think he died before the movie came out.
He did also die before the movie came out. So there might have been like an editing note of like, let's linger a little longer.
Let him do a little chuckle to his friend. Is that the one you don't like?
No, that's not the one. Gosh. I like that one fine enough.
Okay, so Madman Mooney is Milton Berle, and that one feels pretty normal.
Yep, don't mind him.
Kojak is in the bar, and he seems pretty normal.
Yeah, his is one where I'm like, it feels like they didn't cast him because he's Kojak. Yeah, it feels like he was just cast, and then everyone was like, "Is that Kojak?"
That's Kojak. Yeah, Kojak's like slumming it as an extra. Yeah, why? He's still on Kojak right now, I think. Dom DeLuise is impeccable. You can't be mad at him. Is it Lou Lord? What the hell's his name?
No, Orson Welles.
No, Orson Welles is great too.
I like that reveal. It's a good reveal.
He just looks on the Muppets so like with such disdain, it feels like.
Well, and he's just one of those people who, again, you would not naturally associate with the Muppets. Yeah. So that contrast is just chef's kiss. So good.
Who's the guy who's hosting the beauty show?
Oh, that's Elliot Gould.
Elliot Gould's fine too.
Elliot Gould is great, and I think it's very interesting to look back on a lot of the content that he was in back then, because he's like a sex symbol.
Oh yeah.
And I know him as
in The Long Goodbye,
like Rachel and Ross's dad on Friends, and then the guy in like the Ocean's 11 movies.
Yeah.
And I never, no offense to Elliot Gould, would have assumed he was like a hunk.
Beauty standards in the 70s for men were wild.
Yeah, but we're introduced to him in this movie as like flirting with women.
Yeah.
And not in like a creepy way, just as like, oh my God, it's Elliot Gould.
Okay, and it can't be. This is my last one that I can think of. It can't be Paul Williams.
It's not Paul Williams.
Paul Williams looks like a human Muppet and is always a delight to see.
No, but your guessing has done a great service of getting us through that cameo list that I didn't have pulled up in front of me, but it's been very helpful for me to remember them. But no, it is Mel Brooks.
Oh God, I hate that part.
Yep, same. Okay, cool. We're on the same page.
The only part about that I like. So Mel Brooks plays like a Nazi scientist, I guess, who's going to melt Kermit's brain.
He has a weird machine.
Doc Hopper's slave, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. And Miss Piggy, the only good part about that is that Miss Piggy beats people up, which I always think is funny. I love when she goes, hi-ya.
But that just felt like it was a completely different movie. Like it felt like it's happening in like a sketch on The Muppet Show or something, where it's just like, it felt like nobody had control over Mel Brooks.
And I'm sure that that's the case. But I'm also somebody who I don't like Blazing Saddles, and I don't like Spaceballs that much. Like, I don't think he doesn't do it for me.
Okay.
So,
see, I'm traditionally a Mel Brooks fan, but I think he's someone who, for me, is kind of like Quentin Tarantino. I don't know how many other people have compared these two before, but for me, they're both better off behind the camera.
Oh, yeah.
And the moment they show up in their own movie, I can't not see them as them.
Yeah.
And Mel Brooks, especially, I think like this is one of those times where I can forget that Dom DeLuise is Dom DeLuise and think he's an agent from Hollywood. Mel Brooks is clearly Mel Brooks playing a German Nazi scientist.
Yeah, and if you're like a kid watching this movie today, you'd be like, who is this asshole?
Yeah.
I don't want to look at this guy anymore. Yeah, I hate that part. He's just playing it too big compared to everybody else.
Yeah, like
And-
everyone else is like believably. I think it's a thing that happens on the Muppet Show sometimes too, where a celebrity guest will come in and they fully embrace the context of like, I am on a show, my co-stars are puppets, but I am looking at them and acting with them as if they are real people. And I think that's when it works best. Whereas other times people come in and they're like, yeah, this is funny, I'm working with puppets, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what Mel Brooks is sort of doing is like, isn't it ridiculous? I'm working with a frog and a pig. Whereas you have the guy who plays Doc Hopper, who I just want to call him Pappy O'Daniel because that's who he plays in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah, that's what I think too.
yeah.
I just call him Doc Hopper every
Those
time.
two
I
are the
see him.
same character in my head. Like Pappy O'Daniel and Doc Hopper, pretty
Maybe
much the
Pappy
same.
O'Daniel is like Doc Hopper's grandpa because that's like a Depression era.
I guess it
movie,
is set in the past, yeah.
I like that canon.
I don't know, and I don't want to necessarily think of Doc Hopper as a Klansman.
Oh no, I think Doc Hopper is a good man in his heart. I think he used to be a good man, and he's just lost now.
He's down on his luck, can't keep the Frog League business going.
He's too greedy. That's
Yeah.
just his problem. He's too greedy. But yeah, okay. So compared to him,
But yeah, like he seems like a villain that is believable in this world. Like he
Yeah.
is trying to save his business. He's hunting down this frog. Like him and his sidekick are doing a great job. And then you bring in this weird evil scientist character who doesn't make any sense in the world we've established so far. And then throughout the scene continues to make himself further outside of this world.
yeah, especially right after the Steve Martin scene, which is one of the best scene and like the funniest scene in the movie, I would say. And right before the introduction of Snake Walker, who is the bounty hunter that Doc Hopper hires, who has one line, and that line is "kill frogs," which is so much funnier than anything Mel Brooks does with like thousands of words vomited onto the screen.
Yeah.
He just doesn't look good. And Bunsen Honeydew is also a mad scientist who's more funny than Mel Brooks. So he's outdone in this movie every which way.
It would have made a lot more sense to bring in Bunsen and Beaker.
Oh yeah, as like his unwilling associates or something.
Yeah, like he had blackmailed them or something to do some experiment on Kermit to fry his brain.
Yeah.
'Cause that's something Bunsen has definitely done to Beaker at some point. It's like fry his brain.
He fries his head with the little electric thing all the time.
Yeah.
His head catches on fire a lot. That would make more sense. I don't really like their introduction either. Bunsen and Beaker in that ghost town. Kind of
yeah.
feels like a stretch to me. That just is a little bit like, well, we couldn't think of anything else to do, so here's what happens.
Well, and it felt like just such a plot device of, okay, how do we make a giant animal puppet in this movie? Like, how can we get a giant puppet? And it's like, well, what if when they go to the ghost town where nobody else is, Bunsen and Beaker are there and they have growing pills on the counter?
Yeah.
Eh?
When if they had introduced him in that part, in the part with Mel Brooks, they could have had the growing pills still and just had them with them the whole time.
Well, then it would have been the thing where like they show up to the ghost town and they see them again and they're scared of them and they're like, oh my God, it's you terrible people. And it's like, oh no, we're actually nice. He was just holding us hostage to do terrible things. There's so much of this movie that works for me that I think it highlights the little small parts that don't work as well for me. Because I feel the same about the very end as well, when after they get the Rich and Famous contract, then they just like go to this soundstage and start like building sets for a little while.
Yeah.
And I feel like that part just kind of felt tacked on and like I wanted to be done with the movie. Like you wrapped up your plot and it feels like, I think in my head, my memory of this movie is Rich and Famous contract, Rainbow Connection, done. But there's like a 5-minute scene between those two things where not much is really happening. I don't know. Was there anything in it that didn't work for you or that you don't like about it?
I would have totally forgotten about the Mel Brooks one because I just don't like to think about that part. I think for me, the last few times I've seen this, I have really noticed how mean everybody is to Miss Piggy for seemingly no reason. Kermit invites everybody with him to go to Hollywood at the drop of a hat if they're a Muppet.
Yeah.
Except Miss Piggy, who, when she wants to come with them, he's like, oh, well, I guess that's fine. I didn't really want you to, but whatever. And then Fozzie just hates her from the go. And maybe he's jealous of her. I'm not really sure.
Maybe, but he doesn't seem like a character that hates people.
No. And Rolf kind of seems like he hates her. Gonzo's fine with her, but, Gonzo gets along with everybody. But that's one thing that, like, this movie is very much and the Muppets in general was like a boys' club kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. And I think as you see through the Muppet Show and every other thing, every joke about Miss Piggy is that she's fat.
Or, like, really vain.
Yeah. And so it's like, especially going back through the Muppet Show episodes now, watching them, it's like so much of the joke, like so many of the jokes from the celebrities and from the other Muppets is just like, Piggy, I couldn't think of a joke on the top of my head, but
You shouldn't either.
No.
But also I feel like that's something that Miss Piggy kind of works for her. And everybody in the real world loves Miss Piggy. She's like the second most popular Muppet, I would say.
Yeah. But it is just sometimes there's those ones where you're just like, why are we all picking on her? Like, why is everyone else in the room just cool with this happening?
Yeah. And Muppets Go Hollywood actually made me feel a little bit better about that because everybody's like horny for Miss Piggy the entire movie, especially Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah, let's talk about Muppets Go Hollywood real quick for a little bit. It's a special that came out like a month or two before this movie came out to promote this movie. Mm-hmm. And they essentially just shoved a bunch of celebrities into the Coconut Grove Lounge.
The Coconut Grove, yeah.
Yeah, which was a famous place in Hollywood, apparently back in the 30s, Dick Van Dyke talks about. And put on like a little bit of a show with the Muppets.
It's basically a live-action Muppet show.
Yeah, but for celebrities for some reason.
Christopher Reeve is there. Like really huge celebrities.
Peter Falk, who has my favorite moment in the entire thing, when Dick Van Dyke sits down next to him and like asks him a question of like, what do you think this place was like in the 30s? And he's like, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Well, they got food here? It's like, clearly you caught Peter Falk off guard because he was not ready to talk about what the Coconut Grove was like in the 30s.
No.
I don't know. Like, I think Muppets Go Hollywood is worth a watch to understand some of the context around this of like how famous they were, that they had Rita Moreno and Dick Van Dyke hosting a show about them. That's pretty much just, hey, look how great the Muppets are and look how famous they are. And I think you're right in that they get to, when we get the quote unquote real moments with the Muppets where they're not performing, they're much nicer to Piggy and everybody else. Mm-hmm. So I guess we can chalk that up
to... Except Fozzie. They treat Fozzie like shit.
Well, Fozzie's just that,
they think he's Rolf. I thought that was pretty funny. When Muppets Go Hollywood started and all the people were getting out of their limousines, I thought that they were doing a joke and that was like footage from the Oscars and that those people weren't really there.
Right.
And it went inside. Because like I didn't even realize how popular the Muppets were. And then it goes inside and it's like basically an event like the Golden Globe scale or something with hundreds and hundreds of people there. And they're all actually those famous people.
And they're just there to watch the Muppets.
Just there to watch the stupid Muppets. And a lot of what I was thinking about was how nervous all those people playing the Muppets must have been. I would have been terrified.
Especially, I think, like the monster Muppets, like the full body costume Muppets, because they open up the show with "Hooray for Hollywood," and it's very good. I like it a lot. But it's still like you're having to just like be this big old monster in front of Christopher Reeve and Dick Van Dyke, and it's a weird sort of pressure.
Not slip on your big stupid monster feet.
And the whole thing ends with a conga line with a bunch of those celebrities like conga lining around the Coconut Grove
with the monsters.
Yeah, during that conga line there's a moment where Rita Moreno tries to like grab some celebrity's hand. It's like, come on, and the celebrity's just like, nope.
She's like pulling the lady.
Like, I am not standing up, you're on your own.
Rita Moreno's skit was pretty good too when she was trying to do her like really choreographed dance with all the monsters and they were doing a horrible job.
She's really good on her episode of the Muppet Show too.
So yeah, I thought that was a really useful thing to watch too.
Yeah, because I think for me the highlights were like Zoot gets to like play a nice little solo with the band.
That was cool.
And I always like when Zoot gets his moment to shine. And then Johnny Mathis sings Never Before Never Again.
That was great.
And it's hilarious and amazing to hear someone sing that song so earnestly and like make it feel like it's like a real love song that existed on the radio. Because I don't know, for you, I don't know how you feel about this. That song in the movie can sometimes be a little grating.
That's usually when I like go and get to the bathroom or something. Because I know what's going to happen in that part. And it's a dream sequence, so you don't have to really like...
Yeah, and it's one of those things like when I'm listening to just like the soundtrack, it's rough to not skip that song because you're just waiting for those high notes to kick in. And
That's the whole joke of the song.
yeah, which
Really,
I find that the way I enjoy that section more now is imagining Frank Oz having to record it. Like picturing him in his vocal booth in the studio,
Yeah.
belting out Never Before, Never Again is very funny to me.
It's fine, but it's
Yeah.
not really a good song to listen to for exactly the reason you said. But he sings it so beautifully. And the lyrics are really funny when you can understand what they are, too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of my favorite parts. You mentioned Zoot, but I love watching the Electric Mayhem do like their little fake performance. I would love to see them in real life.
Yeah, when they played like Coachella or something a few years ago, or Burning Man, one of those music festivals they played.
Yeah, that
and
sounds right.
that's one of those moments where I'm like, yes, this is exactly what should be happening with the Muppets. It's just like throw them into extremely weird real life things
Yeah.
and just let them be themselves. Like they can sing Can You Picture That? And just let the Coachella audience enjoy that.
It's just a pre-recorded version, and they're all lip syncing. But who
Yeah.
cares? They can't really play their instruments. Speaking of the music,
Yeah.
that is, I think, still as many times as I see this movie, that is still the part that I love the most, and that I will never get sick of.
Oh yeah, Moving Right Along has been stuck in my head like it's every day since I watched the movie again.
That's a great song. It was written by Paul Williams, who was in Muppet Go Hollywood, and he's the piano player at the El Sleazo. And the score was nominated for an Oscar, and Rainbow Connection was nominated for Best Song. It didn't win either of them. But yeah, he was a frequent collaborator with Jim Henson after he was a guest on the Muppet Show. He's like a really famous songwriter, and then he was a guest on the Muppet Show and wrote the songs for Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas and then for the Muppet Show. But yeah, I Can't Live With Him, Can't Live Without Him is a problematic song.
Well, especially if you listen to the extended version, which I have the lyrics here in front of me.
I can't remember them, but I know the extended version.
The extended version essentially, so for people who somehow maybe haven't watched the movie but are listening to this whole conversation, there's a song after Miss Piggy walks out on Kermit at the restaurant because she got a commercial deal where Kermit's hanging out at the bar and he meets Rolf, who's playing piano and basically talking about like, women, huh? Like, can't live with them, can't live without them. And so this song is, I hope that something better comes along, basically saying that like, I love women, but I wish there was a better option. And there's an extra verse that's cut out. And like already, like Sam mentioned, the song is a little problematic and sexist in ways where you're just like, oh, okay, you're really, again, the boys club mentality is there. But the extended section is kind of about like getting somebody pregnant accidentally.
Oh yes, the litter bug thing.
Yeah, because
Right.
it's the extended verse says, but what could be better than a saucy Irish setter when puppy love comes on strong, or a collie that's classy, a laddie needs a lassie, a lover and wife gives you a new leash on life.
Obviously Rolf singing that part. 'cause
Oh
he
yeah,
was a dog.
Yes. And then goes into and then this is Kermit's section where it's like, I don't mean to scare you, my friend, but I bet you. Come Father's Day, the litter bug's gonna get you. The urge is righteous, but the face is wrong. I hope that something better comes along.
I don't know. Yeah. So cool. Cool song about Muppets having sex with dogs.
Well, that's like in that scene too. Rolf is like, yeah, I just like to go home, drink a couple beers, and
Take
I'm just
myself
like,
for a walk. I love Rolf. Rolf's my favorite Muppet.
He's
and I
very
think
good.
Just like he is a scumbag, so it is less. It's less like impactfully bad that song is like that, because like Kermit's sad and Rolf is. He's just like a Homer Simpson almost sort of character.
yeah,
But yeah, all the last song, the Life's Like a Movie thing, that gets me every time.
it's like
Chokes me up.
I have a number of tattoos, but one of the nerdiest ideas that I've had that I have not yet gotten is I've wanted to get "Keep Believing, Keep Pretending" tattooed on me, but in Arabesh, the language.
Oh my god.
You're right? Yeah, no, it went a layer deeper than you thought it was going to go.
Oh my god. How? That's the Star Wars alphabet. For
Correct.
No. How did either of us? We're both married, which is outrageous. We shouldn't be. We don't deserve it.
Well, that's what, you don't tell them about the tattoo ideas until you get married.
Wow, I would shove you into a locker. I would buy a locker to shove you into.
I mean, that's fair. I don't have it yet, so I haven't earned the locker shove. But I feel like once I had it, I would respect that decision on your part. I wanted to ask, do you have a favorite song? Because there's a lot of very good songs.
it's pretty tough between moving right along and can't and hope that something better comes along.
See, my favorite is I'm going to go back there someday.
Oh, that's I forgot about that one.
Because anytime
That's
Gonzo gets super existential is when Gonzo like ekes his way into like top Muppet for me.
Yeah. That is one thing I'm wondering about this movie too, that I'm interested to watch more of the Muppet Show is this the first time that Gonzo is like that?
When he's questioning like, where do I belong? Who am I? Kind of thing.
Yeah, he's just like so sentimental. And in early Muppet Show, he just likes to get blown up.
Yes.
And I don't know when that switch happens, and I'm wondering if this is that movie.
Yeah,
and
I
I'm
don't know.
also wondering if this is him on the balloons in that action scene supposed to be like the origin of him wanting to be a daredevil? I don't really understand his arc, I guess, but
Oh, maybe. I took it as a much more like soulful, like being in the sky just made him feel close to whatever home he's imagining.
okay.
That like I didn't picture it as like now I'm an adrenaline junkie who needs to get my fix.
Yeah, like being in the air brings him like closer to God or whatever.
Yeah.
And, I'm just not sure if like at this point Gonzo is in other Muppets things, like if it is a consistent joke that they don't know what he is, or if it's a joke that he likes to get hurt still, or if he has this like really melancholy note to him in the
Yeah.
Muppet Show.
Which I feel like is one of my favorite things about the Muppet Show is often one of like the later songs in an episode will be a very like earnest performance that's not even trying to be funny. Like it's just like a Muppet performing with a celebrity in just a sweet song or a love song or just like that kind of thing. And it's like that's always, that to me feels like the thing. Like if you're not going to buy into that part of the Muppets, you're probably not going to like some of the other stuff they do because they are not always just going to be like slapsticky, jokey things. Like you have to bite on those serious moments.
Yeah, and the slapstick stuff can fall flat way more often than the sentimental stuff. I was also curious if this was the first time that the Muppets were really sentimental.
I don't think so. I feel like halfway up the stairs,
Oh,
Robin's
God,
song
Robin.
happens
Yes.
before this on the Muppet Show.
Okay.
And there's a number of things that happen on the Muppet Show that I feel like are very like heartfelt, serious things.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just songs that Jim Henson liked when he was a kid, and he puts them into his show, which I applaud him for because they're great. But yeah, I think this may be the most sort of natural development of them.
I forgot Robin was already in full swing at this point.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about him later because I can't stand that guy.
I really like his moment, though, when Kermit says, "This is the patriotic part," and Robin's like, "Should we stand up?"
That was very funny. Yeah, that's cute. He's cute. So he just can be. He's like all of the like sentimental part of Kermit without any of the rest of Kermit. Who I think Kermit's kind of an asshole. I feel like that is sort of his. Kermit is not a very
He's
good.
practical.
He's not really a nice guy in particular, and he gets frustrated very easily.
Yeah. He's got a lot on his plate. Everyone's coming to him, expecting
That's
him to
true.
be in charge. We'll get into that in later movies and TV shows, but
Yeah,
people put too much pressure on Kermit.
they really do. But he kind of puts himself in those situations too.
That's
He
true.
doesn't have very good boundaries.
No.
Moving on from music, if you're ready to move
Yes.
on from music. One thing that was really hitting me this time I watched it was that this felt much more like Jim Henson's origin story than it did the Muppets' origin story. And it surprised me that it wasn't written by him because he's Southern.
Right. From Mississippi, I think.
Yeah, he's from Mississippi. And Kermit is Southern in this movie, apparently. Or lives in Florida, I assume, is where he is.
I was thinking
In
it
the
was
beginning?
like Mississippi, Louisiana,
Yeah.
swamp
'Cause I think
country.
El Sleazo reads like it's in Louisiana to me.
Yeah.
And he gets there within like a day. So
If you try to track the geography of this movie, it's not going to go well.
it wasn't. The moving right along part gets a little wiggy because they're all over the place.
And they're
but
clearly in California every time that they
the
say they're
whole
not
time.
in California.
Yeah, they're in California the whole time.
Yeah.
Clearly. But I was very interested in the fact that the bad guy really wanted Kermit to do commercials when, as we will learn in the next episode of Kermitment, that is what Jim Henson started off doing. And I almost wondered if this was him feeling bad about that, trying to separate himself from that, or trying to like enter a new phase of his career, or like scrub his past a little bit to be like, oh, I've always been this like thoughtful artist, which he has been, I think.
Yeah.
Like his commercials were thoughtful, but it just feels very meaningful that he's trying to escape from commercialism in this movie the whole time. But then it wasn't written by him, so it might just be a total accident.
I had not thought about it that way, but I think you're right that it definitely feels like the parallel is too, I don't know, it's too real of a parallel to not be on purpose to a certain extent. Like, I'm sure he obviously was part of the discussions of what the movie was going to be, and I think they probably knew his story. But yeah, I think that's interesting to look at it as from that side of things, of like, this is Jim Henson's reaction to his career.
Yeah. That's all the thoughts I couldn't, like, there's not much more to pick apart without knowing his whole life story and, like, how this movie came about. But just felt like if you're telling a Muppet Show, like a Muppet Show origin story, this seems like a very particular direction to go in.
Right. And I think the 2011 Muppets kind of feels more like the straightforward approach. Like, if you're going to make a Muppets get back together for the show kind of thing, that feels like the direction you would go. Whereas, yes, like, I think breaking it down and thinking about the Doc Hopper of it all, you're like, I don't understand where that comes from if you've only seen the Muppet Show. Right. So I think, yeah.
Is Doc Hopper in the new Muppet movie? In the 2011 one?
No.
He's in the It's a Wonderful Life kind of rip-off thing, though.
Is he?
Yeah, they mentioned Doc Hopper. Like, when Kermit dies, when Kermit wishes he wasn't alive anymore, one of the side effects of that was that Doc Hopper's becomes like a huge chain.
See, again, raising the question of, is Doc Hopper canon? Was
he real? Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think a few last things that I was thinking about watching this movie that maybe won't spur the biggest discussions, but just little moments that stuck out to me. One, when Fozzie and Kermit are in the car together, there's just so many small good lines. Like, obviously you have the fork in the road line, but then you have the, like, a bear in his natural habitat, a Studebaker.
Yeah. And patriotism swells in the heart of the young American bear.
Yeah.
I love that too.
And it's also good
Fozzie's
because
good in this movie.
Like, Fozzie's thing is that he's a bad, unfunny comedian.
Yeah.
But there's so many good jokes that he says that no one really reacts to. It's like, bear left.
Right, frog. Yeah.
So there's so many, like, he is naturally funny, but when he tries to be funny,
he's horrible at it.
Very bad. He's
also instantly subservient to Kermit in every way.
Yeah.
He calls him sir immediately after meeting him.
Yes.
Which is kind of charming too.
It establishes their dynamic very quickly.
Is Kermit's fringe clothes, or is that on him?
That's a good question. I think I always...
He doesn't have it on in the Never Before, Never Again sequence.
Oh, interesting.
When he has his shirt open, there's no collar. Oh, no, and in the date that he goes on with her, he doesn't have the collar on either.
Well, I guess it's clothes, but...
I guess it must be clothes.
I would have to see some piece of, like, material, not actual material, but, like, a footage of him putting it on or off.
Removing it, yeah.
Yeah, to commit to that being what I think it is. Because I think I've always read it as part of his body.
Right, me too.
Especially because, like, whenever he's on talk shows, one of his go-to jokes is that he's naked.
Oh,
and he never says, except for this collar.
Except for this collar, because that would take it into creepy.
Right, like if he's choosing to wear a collar but not pants.
I'm aware of my nudity and will not cover it up.
Yeah, like my necklace. Speaking, as we did just recently, of Fozzie Bear, he's our Muppet of the Week this week.
Yeah, so every week we're going to spotlight a different Muppet, maybe one who's important to the project that we watched or had their first appearance in this project, or just a random one once we run out of more well-known Muppets to talk about.
Yeah, it won't always line up very conveniently where these first couple are going to be like, oh, well, here's the debut, here's a very well-featured Muppet, but eventually we'll be like, oh yeah, here's that guy who was standing behind Janice in that one scene. What's his story?
We'll get there, yeah.
Yeah.
The blue frackle. We'll get to the blue frackle.
Yeah.
The green frackle. But this time it's Fozzie, surprisingly not Kermit, but Fozzie's almost the co-star of this film, I would say.
Fozzie debuted on The Muppet Show, which is my first little fun fact here.
Did he? That is something I was curious about, because a lot of even Gonzo didn't debut on The Muppet Show.
Yeah.
But Fozzie feels like he didn't exist before that, and I guess it's because he didn't.
Yeah, he debuted as the lovable, bad, insecure comedian bear on The Muppet Show. He is, if you don't know who Fozzie Bear is, he's the orangish brown bear with the small hat and the like pink polka dot tie, ascot handkerchief thing.
Sounds just like Bert from Sesame Street.
Sounds exactly like Bert.
Played by the same guy.
Yep. Voiced by Frank Oz early on, who we'll talk about forever on this podcast because he's voiced so many characters.
He only just recently stopped voicing Fozzie, right?
Yeah, he was basically a full-time Muppet performer from 1976 up through like the mid to late 90s. And he officially retired in 2001, I believe, is when he said, like, I am retiring from the Muppets. And then he went on to do a handful of other appearances after that, mostly just on Sesame Street. He, like, would still go back, like, once every couple of years and do a character, which is nice because, like, I think as recently as, like, 2015 or 2017, he was on Sesame Street still occasionally.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
He's Yoda, too, right?
He is also Yoda. Yes, Frank Oz, famous for so many things. But in the Muppet world, he performed Fozzie, Miss Piggy, Bert, Animal, Sam Eagle. There's many, many more characters. And he was there not since the very beginning of the Jim Henson and the Muppets, but he was there sort of early on. He was like a teenager who Jim met at a puppet convention and was kind of like that sort of like, yeah, you keep living your dreams, kid. And then it was like a year later, Jim Henson was like, I need another puppeteer. Hey, Frank Oz.
That's nice. And then they were like the Muppet duo.
Yeah, and I think you're right when you think of like Bert and Ernie, like Kermit and Fozzie, like when you're thinking of these duo characters, not like Statler and Waldorf, not actually those two, but like if you're thinking of other duos throughout, you have Kermit and Miss Piggy. Like it's Frank Oz and Jim Henson being their hilarious duo. And I think the one thing that camera test shows, the 17-minute camera test for the Muppet movie, shows just how like Frank Oz's improv skills were razor sharp and also sometimes went a little far for Jim Henson.
Yeah.
There's times in there where Fozzie cracks a joke about Sweetums killing rabbits. He's like, he killed 4 of them. And Kermit looks at the camera. He's like, no, he didn't. I think they're fine. And Fozzie's just like, oh yeah, they were sleeping. They were just on their backs.
Well, there's a documentary coming out soon called Street Gang about Sesame Street. And they talk in that about how they were not friends in real life. They only really talk to each other on set and as puppets. And I think you can definitely get that little bit of like that little grain of not getting along is in there in their characters.
And I think it's Jim Henson is somebody who I think is a lot like Kermit in the way you described him earlier, who puts a lot of pressure on himself and is sort of like running the show in a way where when things step out of line, he gets a little uncomfortable. And so I think in his mind, he has a very clear idea of who Fozzie Bear is. And so the moment Frank Oz is behaving in a more Frank Oz way than a Fozzie Bear way, he's just like, no, this is not who you are. This is not your character. But getting back to Fozzie a little bit, some of the interesting things I found out is that his catchphrase, obviously, Waka Waka, you've heard it. He apparently only said that once on the Muppet Show, ever.
Ever?
On like in season 4, he says Waka Waka like once or something.
He says it in the Muppet Movie.
Yeah, he says it in the Muppet Movie like once or twice.
Is that where it came from, the Muppet Movie?
I think so. It sort of comes from a mixture of things. I do believe it started in the comedy scene in the Muppet Movie. But if you watch the Muppet Show, the seasons before this, he does lots of like heya, 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 hiya, 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 hoa, hoa, like that, like just like things like that. And like Waka Waka was just an extension of that, and wasn't really supposed to be like a thing. But now it's one of those things where it, like you said earlier, a Muppet will do one thing and it becomes most of their character. And now like what we associate with Fozzie is saying Waka Waka after jokes.
That is bizarre,
right? Like you just imagine.
I guess that was an episode 1 Muppet Show development.
No, and speaking of episode 1 Muppet Show is very weird to go look at with Fozzie, especially because he has a weirdly like froggy, deep voice. Especially,
I don't want to hear that.
There's a scene where he plays a cowboy, and it seems like he's doing sort of like a John Wayne impersonation. But apparently, that scene was just recorded, and that was the voice Frank Oz gave Fozzie at the beginning. And then after, like I think that's the pilot episode, and they went back and they decided to change it. And then recorded and inserted a scene that takes place before that sketch now, where Fozzie goes up to Kermit and says, like, I think I'm going to try out this voice.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a very good way to cover your tracks. But yeah, like like a lot of the Muppets, they're not fully developed when they come out for the first
Oh, yeah.
time. And
That's an
Fozzie-
interesting thing about Muppets in general is that they'll pop up in stuff before they become the character that they become.
Yeah, like we'll talk about this more as we do other Muppets of the Week, like Gonzo and Miss Piggy and all these people who like existed as characters or as puppets, but like had a different voice actor or a different name. But it turned out there was a few rumors about Fozzie of like where his name came from. Some people were like, oh, it's like the F from Frank and the Oz from Oz and Foz, like Frank Oz, Fozzie.
Sure.
But apparently there was another rumor about Jim Henson's wife's fraternity had like Foz in the name or something like that. But it really what it turned out to be is Frank Oz clarified recently that it's named after Foz Fazakis, who was a puppeteer and designer who worked with the Muppets. And he created the mechanism that let Fozzie wiggle his ears in the early days. And so they just named the puppet after him. But yeah, then Fozzie the puppet was designed by Michael Frith and built by Bonnie Erickson. The original puppet is kept at the Teddy Bear Museum in Newby Hall in the UK.
Is that right? It sounds like somewhere in England.
But yeah, as I mentioned, he's now voiced by Eric Jacobson, who has been doing most of Frank Oz's roles since around 2002. When I was looking up sort of Frank Oz's transition out of the Fozzie times, it seems like, and this makes a lot of sense, after Jim Henson died in 1990, 89 or 90, I think it was 90, he just kind of lost a little bit of interest in being with the Muppets, which would make total sense if one of your best friends or best work pals that you're working on this stuff died. But he also, at the same time, was trying to become a movie director and a theater director, and also was having a bunch of kids and all this stuff. So it's like his life was just getting very busy for Muppets.
He had to go direct Bowfinger.
Yeah, he had stuff to do. But he basically in an interview said that like he loves the Muppets and loved his time, but at the same time he never really wanted to be a puppeteer in the first place. Like that wasn't necessarily his dream job when he was growing up, and so he felt a little limited not being able to direct other things. So he had to eventually, it came to a point where I don't know if it was his full decision or if it was them saying, hey, you should stop. Because what happened was in the mid to late 90s, there was a lot of times where Fozzie or Miss Piggy or somebody was in a movie or a TV show, but Frank Oz wasn't available. So he wouldn't be performing the puppet on set, and then he would have to dub it over later. And so like Muppets from Space, Muppet Christmas Carol, I think, maybe not Muppet Christmas Carol, but at least Muppets from Space and some of like the later 90s type things, Frank Oz was not on set for more than like a day or two sometimes, and then would just dub over all his lines later on. And so I think that became a thing where maybe they were, this is speculation here, but maybe they were like, hey, we really need somebody who can do this full time. And it seemed like Frank Oz helped pick out Eric Jacobson to replace him, which is always nice rather than the way some of the Kermit stuff has gone in the past few years. I've listened back to a few like early 2000s era Fozzie stuff to try and see if there's like a very clear difference. And I think Eric Jacobson does a great job.
I don't think a Fozzie has ever have been played by anybody else. His voice sounds the same still, like in the new Muppet TV show.
Yeah, like I don't watch that and then watch the Muppet movie and feel like they're wildly different for any reason.
Sometimes you hear Kermit and think, that's not really...
Especially in the last few years, which I'm sure we'll talk about more next week. Getting into that sort of gray area, what is canon, what isn't area of things... And on the very useful Muppet Wiki, they break down Fozzie's family and friends. And I think there's some that we obviously know. There's Ma Bear, who apparently is named Emily at certain points.
Emily Bear,
I remember her most from A Muppet Family Christmas.
Yeah, she's like the breakout star of Muppet Family Christmas.
Yeah, just a mom who wants to go on vacation and can't because everyone.
And also delightfully in Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah, but outside of that, there is apparently an extended Fozzie family.
Okay.
In the books. Muppet Kids, which is sort of like a middle ground between Muppet Babies and Muppets. It's just a series of books where they're sort of like, I don't know, 4th graders, 6th graders maybe. Kermit's cool and wears a backwards baseball cap.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But he has a brother named Freddie, a little brother. And then, obviously, the uncle mentioned in this movie who loans him the Studebaker.
Yeah, who's dead.
Yes.
Oh, no, he's not dead. He's hibernating.
He's hibernating, right.
Yeah.
He has a grandpa in the Muppet Kids books as well who comes over and like just plays with the kids. And then in the Muppet Show, he has a cousin who is seen in one episode where Fozzie addresses the audience and says, can anybody who's not a Fozzie the Bear fan please leave? And everyone, including Fozzie's cousin, leaves the theater. And then on top of that,
Great.
there's some running gags that I didn't really know were a thing, and maybe we'll pick up more on like as we watch some of these things. But there's Gags Beasley is the name of Fozzie's comedy writer that he apparently mentions routinely throughout the Muppet Show and other things. He alludes to this Gags Beasley, who we never see. And then there's also Irving Bizarre, who is Fozzie's agent that he refers to at different times. So again, it's like sort of like a what is happening in a story, what is happening outside of a story. I don't know if we'll ever have clarity on some of that, but I do really like that we have the weird combination of Kermit and Fozzie in the form of their father in The Great Muppet Caper. But I guess, yeah, to wrap up the Muppet of the Week segment, do you like Fozzie?
I love Fozzie. I think Fozzie's, obviously a top tier Muppet because he's one of the biggest stars, but I really identify with the artist who's trying really hard, but everybody really doesn't like that much kind of thing, or like the lovable loser archetype, which is all over Muppets, which I think is something that I like the most about it. But
I feel like we might have a little bit of Kermit and Fozzie to us.
Oh, I once we get into these characters, I'm very fascinated by the fact that you like Gonzo so much.
Yeah.
But you are not a Gonzo man.
I don't think I am a Gonzo. I think I'm definitely more of a Scooter Kermit hybrid, maybe.
Yeah. Whereas I like Kermit, am frustrated by Kermit. I think he's not a nice person, but I do think that he's like kind of an interesting role model, or like he's a very realistic depiction of a human being.
He's very practical. That's what I like about him. But Fozzie, for me, I don't know. I like Fozzie. I do like Fozzie a lot. But I think Fozzie sometimes can feel out of place in certain things.
Oh, I don't. I think that's kind of the charm of him. I think he just isn't. He doesn't quite fit anywhere. Also, of any Muppet I want to touch, Fozzie is the top. Fozzie and Rolf are the top of my list. They look like they feel so nice.
There's a very good rundown, very thorough, on Muppet Wiki of like Muppets through the ages, and shows how they changed like form and furriness and all this stuff. And it turns out like Fozzie's furriest era was during the 2011 Muppets movie with Jason Segel. Was like when he was at his furriest. Usually he's a little curlier. He's very fluffy in Muppets, which I did never even realize until you see 13 different versions of Fozzie next to each other. Then you start to see how they changed the shape of his head, the focus of his eyes, all these different things. But I do think you're right. Like Fozzie is top tier Muppet. Fozzie is one that like you can't. If you had a Muppet thing without Fozzie, he would be missed.
You also he and Miss Piggy, I feel like, are two characters that you just know who they are instantly, and their characters have not changed at all in the past. Like Miss Piggy has since her first introduction.
Yeah, but once
it's so
they're
easy
established,
to be like, she's the prima donna who's like really actually going to kick your ass.
Yeah,
and Fozzie is just like the bad comedian who is a loyal friend to the end, who is just trying his best, and you can tell by his little sad eyebrows just exactly who he is.
And I think that's the only thing that has really changed about Fozzie is when you go back and watch like the first season of the Muppet Show, there's not anyone really on Fozzie's side, and he's not really like, he's not that likable. Like you feel bad for him, but his lovable side is not really shining in that first season so much. And no one really seems to be rooting for him that much. They're all just like, he's a bad comedian, like he sucks. So I'm glad that they eventually sort of fleshed out that character a little bit more and made him more lovable, and like you want him to succeed even though you know he never will.
Yeah.
So now that we've talked all about the Muppet Movie and Fozzie Bear, what are some other non-Muppet things you've enjoyed this past week or so, Sam?
Oh.
To be fair, this being the first episode, I think we crammed.
I've been watching a lot of this. Yeah.
I watched the Muppet Movie like 1.5 times to prepare for this, and then watched all that other stuff. So yes, it has been a lot of Muppets this week.
We've been getting prepared for the show, so I've been watching a lot of Muppet stuff. I'm also on Snark Squad, which is our friend Nicole and Mari's pop culture criticism podcast, and they're making me watch all the DC EU movies.
So sorry.
So I had to watch Aquaman, Wonder Woman 2, Birds of Prey, and what's the last one? Oh, Shazam. Last like week and a half.
That's a better batch than the first batch of DCEU movies, though.
Just not that much better. It's a little bit better. It is better, but it's not that much better. The one thing that I've actually enjoyed is the new Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury. I've been playing Bowser's Fury a lot, and I think it's the best Mario thing I ever played, basically.
I've also been playing a lot of that. It's very good. I also watched, for the first time this weekend, I watched Emma, the new Emma that came out like a year ago.
With the lady from the chess movie.
Yeah.
Is that her?
Yeah, that's the most old man way you could have said that.
Sorry, I don't know what any of it's called, okay?
The Queen's Gambit, which is a show, not a movie.
Oh,
I
was legitimately going to say King of Queens, but it's not that.
Queen of Queens, the chess movie on Netflix. But no, Emma is very good and very fun. So next week, though, we are going to go all the way back to the beginning and start this chronological Kermitted journey that we're on.
Here's what I like to pretend. That
right.
It's the last scene of the Muppet movie, and it's Kermit, and he's singing with all his friends. Freeze frame, Kermit, zoom in. Kermit's like, oh, you might be wondering. Yep, that's me. You might be wondering how a frog like me got to a place like this. Well, it's a long story. Flashback to what, Matt?
1954.
And what is the thing?
The Junior Morning Show was the first thing that he did.
Oh my goodness.
But Sam and Friends is really what we'll be talking about because that's what you can actually watch. There's no footage of the other thing I mentioned. But Sam and Friends is what we'll be talking about to try and start to fill in this timeline of mystery of how Kermit got to be where he was. And yeah, we're going to put together playlists that we'll tweet out on our Twitter, which is @KermitmentPod. So you can watch along with us before we talk about Sam and Friends. There'll be Sam and Friends, and there'll probably be some Wilkins and Wonkins commercials, along with any other that era of things that we can find to talk about. Mm-hmm. And we'll also have a playlist posted there featuring Muppets Go Hollywood and the 17-minute camera test that we talked about this week, so that way you can watch those things and know what the hell we were talking about.
Does Muppets Go Hollywood exist in any form except extremely pixelated on YouTube?
I don't think so. I think a lot of these things were released as a VHS a few months after they came out, maybe, but that's about it.
Okay.
Like throughout the 80s and 90s, some of these things came out on VHS, but were never released on DVD or anything other than that. So I don't think there's a lot of demand for Muppets Go Hollywood to be released on Blu-ray at this point, but maybe that can be the goal of this podcast, is to get the weird ephemera of the Muppets universe released
4K
in some
release,
way.
so you can actually tell it's Rita Moreno instead of just being told that it is.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if we're talking about real goals of this podcast, number one would be getting Muppets Tonight on Disney+.
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
Like, I don't care so much about Muppets Go Hollywood being released in any real way. I would much rather want Muppets Tonight released in a real way. But if you want to watch along with us on those things, check out those playlists that we tweet out @KermitmentPod. Follow us there to hear anything about the podcast, and we'll probably retweet some other fun Muppet things between episodes as well. And you can also follow us individually on Twitter if you want to do that. I'm @MatthewGatos.
And I'm @SlamSchultz.
Big thanks to our friend Tuna for putting together our theme song, and to Cassie Wilson for singing the theme song. And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.